Good morning. Happy Valentine's Day to all my um, friends on Facebook and all of our Juicy Sacred Living friends. Peter and I say hello across the miles, and he can't be with us this morning, but wanted to give you a hello and happy day to you on this Valentine's Day of 2017. I wanted to share something with you that I don't hear a lot about love. And first off, I tell you a story about Peter and I, a secret story. And then I'm going to tell you what I think is actually a universal secret about love that I don't hear people talking about. And, I hear lots of folks talking about, well, if you love yourself, then you can find the love of your life. And, there are folks that, are relationship coaches and teach courses. And even Peter and I, teach some courses and do some coaching on relationship. But we do it from a slightly different, or maybe a more than slightly different viewpoint than what most people do. I don't believe it. I don't agree that you have to love yourself before you find the love of your life, because I did not love myself when I found the love of my life. And neither did Peter. And we learned to love ourselves as a result of being in the alchemical container of our relationship, loving each other. We taught each other how to love ourselves. And so I don't agree with that necessarily. And that may be somebody else's path, but that wasn't the path that I walked. So don't be concerned about that. You don't have to overcome that hurdle of, oh my God, I've got to love myself before somebody else will love me. It's not true. It's not true. It's not. I'm a living example of that. However, I am going to tell you what I think led to Peter and I coming together. And it's the secret that I don't hear people talking about. So buckle in. I'm going to be here for a few minutes telling the story. So get your coffee or your tea and listen in. So back in 1986, when I was a junior in college at Georgia State University, I was a woman who had come out of a difficult family situation, abuse and a lot of darkness, addiction, in the family, and had catapulted out into the world, to go to school on my Pell Grants, and gonna go, change my life and kick some booty, and I did pretty well. Did my grades were good, and I was doing okay, and then I started kind of manifesting some of the stuff that I'd learned in my family. I started partying at college. I started at UGA, and that was a real big party school back then. And hanging out with people who were not very nice, didn't have my best at heart, and started kind of going down. So I changed schools for my junior year, and thinking, well, I'll just leave Georgia, behind. I'll leave the party school behind, and maybe that I'll get serious. And so I was still kind of like pulling myself up by my bootstraps, but having terrible luck in the love department. Still attracting kind of abusive partners, and sexually somewhat promiscuous, and it started, kind of getting worse. It's like I was looking for love, but didn't know that's what I was looking for. I didn't love myself. That's for darn sure. And so it was a real struggle that year. I was really having a hard time, and going out and, clubbing in the night, and dancing, and people would buy me drinks, and I may or may not go home with them, or they may or may not come home with me. So yeah, I mean, I was kind of a girl who was, um, really trying to find some sense of home in myself, and didn't have a sense of home in myself, didn't have a feeling of self-value. So there's the evidence. I did not love myself. And then one day, I was driving in my beat up inherited station wagon, whose name was Gunda, because she was just lumbered along, and sometimes she would stop all by herself. The engine would cut off, and which was a disaster with power steering and power brakes. But anyway, that's another story. So I was driving in my car on Monroe Avenue in Atlanta, and I think I was hungover because I remember a haze, just kind of this haze, and I was just sort of, not being present, just like, just driving my car. And miserable, just, unhappy, and no energy, and just, sad. Like, if I remember a sad feeling, just sad, in general. Not really having a sense of conscious awareness necessarily, but just, bleak, lonely, and sad. Not feeling great about myself. And all of a sudden, I heard a voice, and I was alone in the car. I was driving the car, but there was no one else in the car with me. But I heard a voice, and it wasn't, like hearing it in my ears. Hearing it in my head. I actually heard the voice in my ear. And the voice said, "Leisha, if you keep this up, you will be dead by the time you're 25. I was 21 at the time. Young and presumably healthy, but on a real crash course, really unhappy in my life. And I looked around in the car because I heard this voice. I'm like, I look over the passenger seat. There's nobody there. And I'm like, okay. And, continued driving home. And for whatever reason, that strange experience, which I now, consider to be a mystical experience, changed my life, because in that moment I heard with my heart, I really heard this voice say, "Leisha, if you keep this up, you're going to be dead by the time you're 25. And initially it was like, well, damn, I don't want to be dead by the time I'm 25. I have things I want to do, and I love life, even though I'm miserable. And I don't want to die when I'm 25. And so initially it was scary, but then I heard something deeper. There was something deeper in that. And I realized I did value my life enough to change, just little change, So I started staying home at night instead of going out and clubbing. And I started sleeping, getting some sleep at night, drinking water, eating food. Like, what a concept, right? A poor college kid can't, afford to feed herself. And I just kind of, as if I had taken my life over and almost like gone to a monastery. I like changed. It became this. My life became this holy. It just felt different. It was like I was being scrubbed clean. I felt this spiritual presence with me that I hadn't felt since I was a young girl. And I gave up the things that I knew were taking my life down. 3 weeks later, I walk into a restaurant where I'm going to apply for a job to wait tables. And across the restaurant, I see a young man, and there's something about him that I recognize. We hadn't met before, but when I looked at him and his eyes met mine just briefly from across the restaurant, the feeling I had was, there you are. And he came up to me because he apparently had the same draw. He came up to me later that evening as I was interviewing for a job, and he was waiting tables at the restaurant. And he, introduced himself. And I stuck out my hand and I said, "Hi, I'm Leisha." And we shook hands. And he says that in that moment, he had a hammer between the eyes that told him that this was the woman he was going to marry. And almost 31 years later, we are. And we have had an amazing and wild, growthful ride in our relationship. Now, here's the secret. Here's the thing that I want to tell you that you are not probably hearing anywhere else. And if you are, good on them. Basically, Peter and I both, before we met each other, had tried everything. We had both been involved in multiple relationships with multiple partners and multiple date, different person for every night of the week kind of thing, dating. Miserable, lonely, looking for something, deeper than that typical sort of one night stand or that intellectual relationship, looking for something that was soulful, but didn't know what to call it at that time. We didn't call it that. And we were so sad and so disappointed that we gave up. Each of us, prior to meeting each other, gave up. For me, I'd been so, miserable and sad, and then I had this mystical experience and gave up going out and clubbing, gave up going dancing at night, gave up drinking, gave up, the one night stands, just gave up. I just gave up and just started taking care of myself, And that's when I met him. And that's, it opened me up. It made me available because I wasn't following some idea in my head of what love was going to look like or what I needed to do to get love. I gave it all up and surrendered and just started showing up for myself. Now, that may be the definition of loving yourself, when you just surrender. And in that case, maybe it is true that we love ourselves before we love someone else, but it's not the way we have been taught. My experience and Peter's experience, our experience at Juicy Sacred Living, is that love is bigger than ourselves, and that love is the natural state of things, and that love brings love together, and that when we surrender, that intelligence that's bigger than us, that love that's bigger than us, brings us together with the people that we are meant to be with, that are compatible, that have a desire to grow like we do, a desire for adventure and to experience life as a loving thing like we do, and that it's truly possible, but that we need to surrender, that we need to let that larger intelligence put us together. I'll tell you, when I first met Peter, I had the recognition, but I didn't have the, oh, this is the guy I'm going to marry thing that he had about me. In fact, he was really clear. I was the one, like from the moment we met. But for me, it took a while because he was so nice. I was really used to those kind of dangerous people for my relationships, and he was so easy. He was so kind to me. He treated me beautifully. He opened the door for me, and he he was sweet and caring, and didn't try to hurt or take, or he respected me. And I was so unused to that. I was so um, kind of baffled by it. It was almost boring. I remember saying to myself, he's so boring. He's just like, he's so nice. He's kind of boring. And that was a decision point for me again, another giving up, another surrender, because the larger intelligence, it brought us together. There was that feeling of, I recognize this, there was something there, like there's something bigger than us holding us together. But I still had to keep making the decision over and over again to surrender my ideas of what I thought I wanted, and trust that there was something bigger going on, and let that guide me. So there's the secret that people don't talk about when they're talking about love and relationship. I really truly feel, and Peter feels this way, and we at Juicy Sacred Living feel this way. Love is bigger than any of us, alone or together. It's the actual state of the universe, the natural energy of the universe, and that when we allow ourselves to just give up, just give it up, all those various things that we think, and the habits and patterns we have created in our lives that block that true love, then it shows up. It can't help it. It just shows up. So, like the river meets the sea, that's how it shows up. So I hope that this was of help, and support to you. For those of you who are already in relationship, that you can deepen your relationship by giving up those things that prevent you from experiencing that flow, that natural flow of love with your partner. And for those of you who are not in relationship at this time, but are interested, maybe you've been seeking it actively, but my advice, our advice, give up. Surrender. And let the larger intelligence of love bring you what you truly, in your soul and heart and spirit, are thirsty for, which is real love. All right. Love you guys. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.